Welcome, listeners. I'm Miles Taylor, your host and the creator behind the Unspoken of Wall Street podcast. Join me as I sit down with remarkable minority leaders in the business world, peeling back the layers to discover the keys to their success in a fiercely competitive landscape. So lean in and savor the stories that often go untold. Enjoy. In this episode, we explore Samuel's remarkable journey from selling lemonade in middle school to balancing multiple jobs while pursuing a top 25 business school education. Today, he stands as a visionary co-founder of a thriving app development company and a sole founder of a fast-growing coffee company. Join us as he shares invaluable insights, particularly on the art of raising capital for startups. Enjoy. You ready?
Yeah, let's do this.
All right, man. I think it'd be good if you can give the listeners just a quick summary of your bio.
Yeah, I'm somewhat Buchanan. I grew up in a small town in Vermilion, Ohio. It was about 2 or 3 thousand people. It's a really small town, about 40 minutes outside of Cleveland. I'm one of three. So I have an older brother and an older sister. My mom is Puerto Rican and my dad is black. I grew up in a very stable household. My parents' biggest focus was strong core values and just getting good grades. And then also, I guess once we're talking about entrepreneurship, my parents really taught me the value of a dollar. So whenever I had like the newest game or something, my mom would make me do chores to like kind of earn money for that thing, or I would do like shovel driveways or lemonade stands or however I could, get that stuff to happen. So
Yeah, got you. Awesome. So, hold on, let's take a step back. Lemonade stands. Were you actually were you doing this in like high school or something or middle school?
yeah, so middle school I do like lemonade stands. High school was more like shoveling driveways, doing yard work. I also caddied during the summers, which was really good. So I got to surround myself with a lot of like high net worth individuals, I guess you would say, because it's like a private country club. And that was like really good to just surround myself and start learning, business acumen. So, um, but yeah,
Yeah.
lemonade stands.
Yeah, that makes
If I
were you
could, if I
actually
could still run, if I could still do them today, I would. I don't think anyone would buy lemonade from a grown ass man though, or
yeah.
grown man. Whoops.
Like, were you actually making money on these lemonade stands? Actually, because I just see it in TVs. I actually never seen anybody just selling lemonade stands.
Yeah, think about it, man. You buy a thing of Kool-Aid for like, $5 or something, you charge $1 a cup.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you can do pretty well. High profit margins for sure.
Yeah, that's great. But all right, man, let's start. So I know you attended Wake Forest. So can you first talk about why pursue Wake Forest?
Yeah, honestly, I loved Wake. One of the reasons I chose Wake was because one, I knew it was going to offer me a lot of opportunities. And then two, at the time, I think it was like ranked 23rd or something for best undergraduate schools in the country. So I knew I'd be surrounding myself with like really smart, competitive people. Um, yeah, that's kind of, I guess, why I chose them.
And how was your experience there, both undergrad and graduate? Just
Yeah, it was definitely a very expensive school. So I had some scholarship, but I had to hustle a lot on campus. So I had like 4 or 5 jobs. Um, the first one I was like, so like because I had 4 or 5 jobs, like I knew I just wanted to continue working and like I liked making money and I liked making sure I was in like a good situation. So I was like a resident advisor on campus. So I got like my housing paid for and I got like a little stipend. I worked in IT at like the business school, like setting up computers and stuff. Um, I hacked a system once where it was there's this book company that would like buy student books because you know how expensive books were. They'd buy student
it's
books
crazy.
for like half the price, and they would pay like a student ambassador to go out and like get these books and like scan them. But the way that their app worked is you would scan it and it would round everything to like nearest dollar, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So if the book was like cost you $100 to buy on campus, they might buy it for like 30 or $40. And then if it was like $39, 39.50, they'd like round it to like 40.
Hmm.
So I found a hack where and this is like just how my mind works in terms of like hustling. I realized that if I scan like a junk book, it would like ring up as 25 cents, but then it would round to $1. So I went on Craigslist and I bought like I don't know, like $200 worth of books. And these there was like 1,000 or 2,000 books. And like I like stored them in my dorm room and I spent like days just scanning these things. Um just so I could pay some of my tuition.
Yeah, you
It
got to
ended
find
up
a
working
way.
really well. The next year though, they discontinued it. Like they just like completely like readjusted the app. And I think it was because of me.
That's
Um
funny. That's hilarious.
yeah. And then like my last job, I Spanish tutored on campus. So I was a Spanish tutor. And that's actually how I met my wife. So
Oh wow, are you
um
fluent?
yeah, well, I am fluent. Not as much as I'd like nowadays because I don't speak it as much, but yeah.
No, that's
I still have a lot
awesome.
of family. I travel a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Spanish is my toughest subject ever. That's crazy. I couldn't understand it. It killed me. Um,
Was it was it just like the like
dude,
learning the language or like pronunciation or
yeah, it was learning the language, and I think what really hurt me was so we put the adjective before the noun. So we say like blue car or whatever, but in Spanish, correct, they say like car blue, right?
yeah,
I just could not. I don't know what it
couldn't
was.
get it? Yeah,
I don't know what it was. So, um,
that makes sense.
but anyway, so I know you're working through Wake Forest, and I know your first stop was in operations at was it Food Lion Corporate, correct?
Yeah, after grad school at Wake, I went to Food Lion.
Got
Uh,
you. And can you kind of talk to me like, what motivated you to pursue that opportunity?
it was so my first job wasn't actually operations. It was actually a candy analyst. And that was like a really interesting opportunity. So I was like the person that like determined like the assortment and the pricing that went on the candy at the register. Um, so, I do like consumer insights or just like looking at numbers to see like what's sold. I talk with like vendors and stuff like that. So, that was more interesting than the other job offer that I got when I came out of school, which was women's underwear.
Hmm.
So I decided to opt in for the candy analyst position. And then over the course of like a year or two, I found myself going into operations because
Hmm.
there's an opportunity that worked opened up, and I said, let me just move and try this out for a little bit.
Did you have to travel a lot doing this candy analyst job?
No, for the operations job, yeah, I traveled a bit to a lot of the stores. So Food Lion has like I don't know, maybe like 1,100 stores.
Gotcha.
So I would travel around to like the different stores and help them with operations essentially,
Gotcha.
like inefficiencies or Lean Sigma stuff.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And then what were some of like the key lessons or skills like you gained through these years at Food Line that helped your better understanding in the business world?
Yeah. I'd say that the importance of decision making and not like belaboring a decision. So a lot of the time, it's like really scary to make a decision when you're affecting like 1,100 stores and there's like millions of people coming in and out of these stores. Um, but I learned that you just have to like be very thorough in your decision when you're making it the first time and then just make the decision and move on. Like you can't like think about it after the fact. So that was really important, especially as like a startup. Like sometimes every decision is so important, but like at the same time, you can't spend the whole time doing it, otherwise you won't get anything done.
Exactly.
Um, I think working on a team was a really interesting thing that I learned at Food Lion just because like there's people from different walks of life. Um, and then I think just knowing like one other key takeaway is like knowing what it means to be ready. Um, so like Food Lion has like still a very they had a very they had legacy methodology still
Yeah.
in the way that they kind of operated, but some of those things were important because I learned specific skill sets that would position me for entrepreneurship later on. Like making sure that I knew like how to read a balance sheet or how to run a business. Like those things are important things to learn. And I'm not saying that you can't just go out and like anyone could go out and start a business and have more success without going to corporate America. But for me in particular, I thought it was important
Yeah.
to get those skills.
Yeah, yeah, it is important. That was my next question is you go a little deeper, like how did this experience you think contributed to your decision to transition into entrepreneurship? Because that was about the time you started that, right? In the food lines when you started your ventures.
Yeah, I mean, I've always like been an entrepreneur at heart.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily say like Food Lion like sparked me to like be an
Mhm.
entrepreneur. I certainly think that they gave me the tools, but I'd say in terms of like that transition, like what really prompted me to go into entrepreneurship generally was one, COVID, um, because I just ended up having a lot more time on my plate because I was working from home and I was getting my projects done really quickly. And then two, just timing. I thought the timing was really, really good for what I wanted to do. I had been in corporate America for a few years, and I knew that I was ready to try something different. And then my now co-founder, he had been working on this thing and kind of convinced me to go all in with him on it. So that's kind of what transitioned, or I guess pushed me to go all in as an entrepreneur. Now I
Gotcha.
can't go back. So.
That's awesome. And I know you co-founded two companies. So let's first talk about you have a coffee company, is that correct?
Yeah, so I'm actually the sole founder there. That one was actually inspired by Food Lion because I had a lot of retail experience with uh, like managing the category management experience there. So I started that one during COVID just because I really wanted to start something, and I didn't have a lot of money, and I realized that I could just start something simple, try it out. I already had all the experience. I had like all the data I could ever want. And I just kind of started like this coffee brand called La Selva Coffee, which translated in English is just jungle coffee.
Hmm.
Um, and I've been running it for a few years now. It's a kind of doesn't really require a ton of work nowadays. It just kind of runs itself.
Awesome.
But definitely took a little bit of work to get it off the ground at the beginning.
And what are y'all doing?
So La Selva Coffee is essentially just a drop shipping coffee company. So someone would order coffee from my website, and then that order would go to a distributor. And the distinction between like getting coffee there and getting coffee at a grocery store, um, is the fact that the coffee roaster will roast that coffee and ship it directly to you. Um, and fresh roasted coffee versus coffee that's gone through like distribution centers and stuff is significantly better than just, like Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
Just because it smells better, it tastes better, it's a little bit more robust.
Hmm.
So that was kind of like my differentiator that I went into a number of other. I'm working with a few different companies like Snack Magic and some other companies, but
Yeah.
that's kind of like the biggest distinguisher is the fresh
Gotcha.
roasted coffee.
And how are you guys doing?
Doing well, doing well. Still not out of business yet. I certainly wish I could put more time into it
Yeah.
um, than I already do, but we're doing really well with it so
Yeah.
far.
That's awesome. So let's go over to your other business, One Spot. So just kind of talk to me about the thesis of the company and, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, so One Spot is my full-time job. I'm one of the co-founders. It's me and another person. Um, Essentially what One Spot is it is the world's easiest no-code mobile app builder. So it's a drag and drop platform with generative AI that lets somebody make a mobile app and publish it right from their phone and computer in minutes. So if you want to make a mobile app for your school or your business or church or nonprofit organization or whatever, you can actually just make it without any technical experience. And the
Mhm.
reason it's called like One Spot is because it takes everything about your organization and consolidates it into one spot.
That's awesome. So essentially, if I have like a lemonade stand, for example, and
Exactly.
I have a website, I essentially could just download One Spot app, copy and paste my URL, and then pick whatever app that I want to mimic, I guess, right? Is that sort of
Yeah, so if you have a website, yeah, you can actually just use our AI builder to just make your app for you. And if you don't have a website, like a lot of people don't, You can actually just make it from scratch, and then you can also convert that mobile app to a website later on,
Gotcha.
which is like a domain name. So yeah, you don't even like think about I don't know, like maybe you want to make an app for maybe you join like a basketball league or something, and you want to make an app for your basketball league that has the schedules, it has a group chat,
Mhm.
and it has like push notification capabilities and all that kind of stuff. Like you could make that and just launch that to the app stores,
Wow.
just for that specific use case. Or if you have like a wedding, you could just make an app for your wedding and launch that.
Got you. That's awesome. And I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but before One Spot, or even during, did you ever have to raise money at all during this? Like,
Yeah, we we did end up having to raise money. That was one of the criteria for me going full time. It's very scary to go into a company or a business that's not making any money.
Mhm.
But we went through an accelerator program in San Francisco called Alchemist Accelerator. And they gave us a bit of seed money that we were able to use to kind of get like a MVP going. And then from there, we raised almost like a pre-seed from angel investors, and that allowed us to actually scale to almost like 5,000 apps on our platform or something like that right now.
Wow.
As of 5:59 February 1st. So
2026.
next time you check in, maybe we'll be at a million.
Yeah, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
just for like educational purposes, I want the listeners to hear this. How was it raising funding? Like, is it difficult? Just kind of talk me through one. I know you just walked me through your process, but even the process before that, like building the slide decks, who are you reaching out to? Who are you reaching out to? How are you finding these people that are willing to invest?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing is well, a few different things. Like one is just like building out your network. So before I was even interested in entrepreneurship, I was most interested in VC. I was interested in like investing in like companies and like how that process worked. So during COVID, I actually just went through like LinkedIn and just like connected with a bunch of people and just asked them questions about like, how do you invest, like all this stuff. Like I had no ulterior motive other than just to learn. So I'd say like build your network because then you can later go back on and tap those people and say, hey, I started this company, what advice can you give me about launching or something? Um, and then I'd say like another thing that's really important is like knowing when you're ready to ask for money.
Yeah.
Um, because you don't really want to be the guy that just asks somebody for money like 10 times and they say no every time. Have a plan of like what it is that you're going in and then imagine like if you have like one or two shots or only a few shots, pitch them with like your best. Not every time. Sometimes you just want to get feedback, which brings me to my next point is like don't be afraid to just like ask investors for feedback.
Yeah.
Don't ask them for money. Just ask them if they have any feedback on your pitch deck. And that's one thing that we did a lot was we went to these investors. We said, hey, can you just give us some feedback on our pitch deck?
Yeah.
Like, is this something that you would maybe invest in? Do you like, why is this pitch deck bad or something like that? And by doing that, you can get a lot of good insights. But then, like, if they're interested in investing, they'll let you know, like, on the call.
Right.
Um, so yeah, and then I guess the biggest thing like that you'll hear maybe if like you listen to like any Silicon Valley like talk or something is like generating FOMO, which
Yeah.
is fear of missing out. So you want investors to feel like they're missing out on an opportunity by not investing. You
Right.
want them to think that you have the next Airbnb or the next like Slack or whatever. You want them to think that you have it. Um, and you want them to think that like everybody's jumping on this thing at the same time. Now, you don't want to like over exaggerate or BS or you don't want to do anything like that, but you want them to know that like you guys are moving so fast that it's either you get in or you get out.
Yeah.
And that works really well for investors. I think we did something really similar when we launched. We did like a pre-launch. We said that we were in beta, which we were. And it was like pre-product, pre-everything, pre-revenue. And we said like once we get revenue and stuff, like this thing's gonna take off. So you can get in now at X valuation,
Yeah.
and then later on it's gonna be a higher valuation. You might not even be able to get in.
Gotcha. Wow, dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love listening to that. So I know you network with a lot of people. Were you emailing a lot of people too? Like, hey, my pitch deck is out.
Um, yeah, I'd say the best way to get like actual like good conversations is to get warm introductions from people.
Makes
Um,
sense.
I mean, like these investors are getting like cold emails like all the time from like millions of founders. So
Yeah,
anytime you can get like an introduction from another founder who they're working with, or from like an advisor or somebody to just like an introduction, that's usually the best way.
yeah.
And that usually gets like the best response rates.
Got you. So back to the day to day of One Spot. How are you and your co-founder? Because I know sometimes a partnership can be difficult. That's what I've read. I'm not an entrepreneur, but that's just what I've read. So how do you two just work together? Can you kind of just talk about that team cohesiveness?
Yeah, I mean, we've been friends for a while now, since freshman year of high school.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, so and he was like my best man at my wedding and everything. Like we've been friends for a while, so that makes it a lot easier. We're friends first, and then coworkers second. Um, so I'd say like oftentimes we get along really well in terms of like managing things. I think he thinks about things a little bit more differently. So he's like all the tech side of everything, and I'm more operations and sales and everything else. Um, so it works really well. I think one thing that we do well is like knowing our place. So I'm not building out code bases and stuff, right? So I don't really have like a ton of insight into that. I mean, I
Mhm.
can give feedback in the same way that he's not like, you know, digging through my CRM or like talking
Yeah,
with customers every day. So we respect those boundaries, and we make sure that like we try to do a good job of communicating,
yeah,
one side to the other. Um, it'd be really interesting once we start bringing on some more people, how we start navigating those changes. But
yeah.
for now, it works really well.
Gotcha. And how many employees do you have right now?
Just two full time. Um,
Gotcha.
yeah, we have a bunch of part timers, but because of the way that one spot is structured, because it's DIY, so you can just do it yourself. We haven't really found a need to hire anybody else. We've thought about it, but I think until we get to a certain metric and certain threshold, like we don't necessarily need to hire anybody.
Mhm.
Because it's kind of like organic. Uh, we're trying to grow our product via network effect. So,
Yeah.
as an example, a school might launch an app. And this actually just happened. A school launched their app, and then somebody for their church wanted to launch an app, and then somebody in that church wanted to launch an app for their business.
Yeah.
So we didn't really need like a sales or marketing person for that. And we didn't need a software engineer person for that because they just did it themselves.
Exactly.
Um, so when
Got
we get to a certain point, I think we'll hire more, but just for us two right now.
Gotcha. Got you. And then what challenges are you seeing in this industry? I assume it's very competitive, but just talk to me like what are you seeing right now?
Yeah, it's certainly competitive. It's not like the most competitive space, but certainly competitive in terms of uh, app builders. I think we're focused on a little bit more different demographic than our other competitors. I think that the most challenging thing is scaling and then just demonstrating the right or communicating the right value proposition to customers. So if I told you like right now that you could make a website with no code, would you be impressed?
No, I
Like
wouldn't.
if I told you you'd make a website or a square, like if I told you I made a website with Wix or Squarespace, you'd be like, okay, that's cool. I could do that too. Or if I
Yeah,
told you like,
exactly.
yeah, I made a flyer on Canva, like, cool. But if I told you I made a mobile app, like that idea is still so new
Mhm.
that people get intimidated by it, and they're impressed by it. They're like, whoa, you made a whole mobile app. Um,
Yeah.
and that feeling and that intimidation is something that it's very important to try and break down early on. Um, because if somebody thinks that a mobile app is very technical and it's complicated and you need coding, they're not going to want to jump onto it. So being able to communicate, to that priest or that pastor, school principal, or like small business or whoever, that hey, this is really approachable. It's just like setting up an Instagram account.
Yeah.
Just downloading it started. That is like the key thing that, we most want to articulate to customers. Like it's an easy thing, it's not complicated. Because most people just find tech just scary. That's,
Yeah.
until it's not, it breaks it down. Like
And that's
AI, right? Like ChatGPT.
yeah.
And everybody thought AI is scary, and then ChatGPT came along. And it's probably still scary, but uh,
Yes,
everybody
sir.
uses it.
I use it all every day. And that's crazy you said that because when I was looking at One Stop, or One Spot, just looking through it, I thought it was more complicated than what it is. I'm like, oh, I got to build all these codes, all this. I'm like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can do it under 15 minutes. Like it's very simple. So it's cool what you guys are doing. So how are you managing these two businesses, with your coffee business and One Spot?
Yeah. So the coffee business, it runs itself pretty much. I think I have to do some amount of work every month to,
Mhm.
update stuff or check inventory or
Yeah.
communicate with like the respective vendors on things that are going on. Um, in terms of one spot, it's like two full-time jobs. So it's certainly a lot of work. Um, in terms of managing, I'd say that like, and honestly, that this just goes with like both of the companies. It's like being as lean as possible and making sure that like you're not wasting time and money. So, and this kind of goes back to like some of the decision making stuff. Like you don't have to have $1 million to run a startup. You don't have to like go full time to like make an idea. Like you can just like start with an idea, get feedback on it, talk with as many potential customers as possible, and just kind of like launch it. And that's kind of like how we run our business is we don't spend a ton of time like
Mhm.
building out specific things just for like one or two people. We'll really be smart about being as lean as possible, not spending a ton of money when we don't have to, um, and just generally just working smarter, not harder, I think
Yeah.
is how I'd be able to manage both of them and just manage a startup generally.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And then what are some of your long-term goals for both businesses?
Yeah, for La Selva, my long-term goal would be to open up a little coffee shop. Um,
That'd be
like
awesome.
a little board game coffee shop. Um,
Yeah.
and then, just kind of work that. I think that'd be fun. For one spot, we really want to empower the non-technical people of the world to be able to create a mobile app without code or without technical experience because it shouldn't be a thing that you have to like know coding for.
Right.
Um, you should be able to just allow people to just do the thing. Allow the 99% of people to be able to like make a mobile app.
Mhm.
That's the goal with One Spot.
Got you. And I know this podcast really focus on minorities, particularly in the entrepreneur world that you are. So just kind of talk to me about just being a minority in a tech heavy space and a coffee space as well. And just can you just talk to me about your experiences?
Yeah, I think that one thing I always like to live by, and sometimes it's hard when you're, the one person in the room who doesn't look the same as everybody else. Um, but sometimes I want to make sure that I look at myself. I don't want to look at this and be like, wow, I succeeded. Top, I'm like the top minority because I did this, or that's good for like another minority. Like I want to make sure that when I do something because I did it, not because it's good for me. It's not because it's good for a minority or anything like
Right.
that. Like I'm
Right.
just as successful as everybody else. And I think that's the mindset that's really important to have, and that inspires confidence because it allows you to go into things without having a chip on your shoulder, which I think is really important, especially when you're dealing with, large amounts of money or people that might not necessarily know any better, right? So being able to just go in with the confidence and have a straight face and go in there knowing that you're capable of doing whatever it is, regardless of who you are, I think is really important.
Right. That's awesome. And I know you're young, but is there any like kind of legacy that you hope to leave, doing these ventures? Because you're doing good stuff right now and you're not even 30 yet.
Yeah, I think the legacy I've always wanted to do, we kind of talked about this. I'd always wanted to like just invest in companies, invest in other entrepreneurs that are doing cool things.
Yeah.
I'm not at that stage yet. I'm the one asking for investment. So
Yeah.
one day I hope to be at that stage, but um, I think that's kind of more of the legacy is be able to pass on the same opportunities that I've had to other people.
Got you. Got you. Awesome, man. And I know we're wrapping up here. So just any last words of advice looking back
Hmm.
at your 22-year-old self?
Should have invested in Bitcoin. That was one. That was one of them. Yeah, I think I honestly, the biggest thing I'd say is just like, don't overthink a business that you want to start. Like, if you just want to start a business, go just head and try it and like do the minimum amount of work possible
Yeah.
to just test the concept. And if it resonates with enough people, then you have something. Um, that would be my biggest thing. Make sure that like all of your stuff is taken care of. Just
Right.
don't just jump into something, but do some due diligence before you actually just jump into something.
Got you. Awesome. Well, you killed it. I appreciate you hopping on.